Guys, I am blown away by the level of enthusiasm and the number of registrations that we've already have gotten for the 100 Great Push-Up Challenge. This is the challenge to train you to do 100 consecutive push-ups in a row over a 60-day period by giving you inside training techniques that allow you to push past your physical, mental, and emotional perceived limits to show you that you are so much more capable than you ever thought possible. And that translates into all areas of your life. This is a free challenge for men around the world for 60 days, 20 minutes a day of training, either physical or mental training. We've got hundreds of guys already signed up, which is really super exciting. And a big part of this challenge is also to be raising $1 million for mental health, which, is an optional part of the challenge. But if you're enthusiastic about that, it is a component of giving back. One of the funnier things I heard recently was someone who signed up said, yep, I need to be a part of this because I need to lose my COVID pounds, both the physical and the emotional that I've accumulated over the last couple of years. Whatever your reason is, if you want to just test yourself to see if you can push past a ceiling or a limitation, if you want to be a part of a community of guys who can hold you accountable and also be really supportive and connect with other men around the world, if you just want to lose weight and see if that's a part of the program for you, a physical exercise program that's going to be for 60 days, whatever your reasons are, take a look at the show notes. Click on the registration link. It'll take you to the page with all the information, top of the show notes for the 100 Push-Up Challenge. Join us in 100 Great, and we'll get things kicked off in just a few short weeks. Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
You are officially now in week number 11 of the Building Your Best Self series. And today we are talking about the 4 dimensions of energy. This is Dominic on a solo mission today. I'm sitting here on a Friday morning, 9 o'clock, recording with you. And I'm excited because this is like the last real bit of work that I have going on before I jump on a 4-day mini adventure with my sister Mary, heading out to Las Vegas to see her favorite musician of all time, Shania Twain. Back in July was my sister Mary's birthday, and I bought her tickets to see Shania Twain in Vegas at the Planet Hollywood, I think. This is a really exciting time for both of us because Mary and I have never taken a trip together, just the two of us. We're getting on an airplane, flying across the country. This will be my most G-rated trip to Las Vegas ever. We're sharing a hotel room. We're going to be, she loves bingo. She loves slot machines. And more than anything, she loves Shania Twain. She already went on Amazon, bought an obnoxious pink cowboy hat that has like sequins on the front of it and actually lights up. She showed it to me already. It's gaudy, it's over the top, and it's exactly Mary's style. And she's going to make a lot of people laugh and smile. And she told me already she's going to be wearing it on the plane tomorrow. So really looking forward to recording this episode for you today because I'm heading to the weekend right after this. So, fellas, we only have a few weeks left here in the year 2021, at least at the time of this recording and the release of this episode. Now, this is typically the time of year where we let our habits go to hell. The holiday season, finishing the year up with work, travel, deadlines, family, events at school, events at work, you name it, our equilibrium can get knocked off its center. And oftentimes you end up finding yourself sacrificing the most important foundational parts of your energy, of your habits. Today, we're going to be taking a look at how do we do a spot check on these 4 dimensions of your energy, your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual dimensions of energy, to see where you're in alignment, to see where you're out of whack, and to make a course correction quickly. Because the way you finish this year will directly correlate to how you start the year ahead. And I think we all know the experience of limping across the finish line of a particular year and then it taking days or weeks or even a month to really get started in the following year. That's not an intentional way of living. That's not how a great man lives. That is the life of a drifter. The antidote to drifting is intentionality. So today's conversation is really about being intentional with respect to your energy. Now, the first question I got to ask you, and it's really quite facetious because I already know the answer. Do you want more energy? Of course, the answer is yes. Unless you're a 7-year-old who's just downed a bag of Skittles and you're bouncing around the room on a sugar high, chances are all of us would say yes to I want more energy. But if we were to get more specific and I were to ask you, what kind of energy do you want? You may pause and have to reflect a little bit more on what kind of energy is it that you want? And one more follow-up question. If you had more energy, what would you use it for? And that's the million-dollar question here. And oftentimes, you need to skip a few beats. You need to pause and really reflect on what you would use more of that energy for, because without some intentionality, that extra energy could just be dedicated to knocking off bullet points on a to-do list. That extra energy could just go into staying up later and watching Netflix. That extra energy could just be, I got to diffuse it by looking at my cell phone and going on social media. But instead, if you were to tie back the 10 conversations we've had up to this point on building your best self, and some of those things you've already started to think about regarding what's my bold move for the next year? Or how do I want to master my time? Or what's the most important thing about turning pro for me around my work or my family or my relationship or my intimacy? You've already done a lot of thinking around what's most important to you. So if you are going to upgrade your energy, then can you make the commitment now to pointing that energy to the thing that's most important for you? So remember, as you listen today to the 4 dimensions of energy, you are going to want to get very specific around, if I'm going to have more energy, I'm going to allocate it to the highest point of leverage in my life. So the model for the 4 dimensions of energy comes from the book, The Only Way to Win by Jim Loehr. Jim Loehr is one of the founders of the Human Performance Institute in Orlando, Florida. It's a facility that I've had a chance to go to a number of times and do training around these 4 dimensions of energy. The Human Performance Institute works with the special forces of the military. They work with elite athletes. I think they've taken a number of tennis pros, golf pros to number 1 in the world through this training methodology. And the model for the 4 dimensions of energy is very simple. I want you to picture a pyramid in your head, okay? And that pyramid has 4 levels. The very first level, the foundational level of that pyramid, is physical energy. And physical energy is the quantity of energy that you have. And I'm going to go a deeper dive into each of these 4 dimensions. I'm just going to give you the overview of the pyramid first. Physical energy, which sits at the foundation of the pyramid, is the quantity of energy that you have. The second dimension of energy is emotional energy. And emotional energy is the quality of energy that you have. Physical is the quantity, emotional is the quality. The third dimension of energy is your mental energy. And your mental energy is the ability to focus your energy. And then finally, at the top of the pyramid, the 4th dimension of energy is spiritual energy. And spiritual energy means the force behind your energy. Now, spiritual for some people means religious. Spiritual in this context really means the force, the power, the connection to purpose of your energy. And we're going to do a deeper dive into what that means as well. So quickly again, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Those are the 4 dimensions of energy. Let us first begin with the bottom of the pyramid, physical energy. Now, physical energy being the quantity of your energy, and physical energy is made up of 3 components: food, movement, and recovery. Food, movement, and recovery. These are the things that contribute to the quantity of physical energy that you have. So food. I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, so I'm not going to get in here around specific food recommendations, but we all know that garbage in equals garbage out. This is the time of year where oftentimes we have the least amount of control over our diet, over the food choices, and we're also subject to a lot of temptation during this time. When we start cutting corners, it can also lead to the unraveling, like pulling that thread from a sweater, all of a sudden the sweater falls apart. One poor decision leads to another one. We rationalize another one. And before we know it, we're completely out of whack with our sleep, with the food that impacts our sleep, which impacts our workout routines. So here is your opportunity to take a hard look at what have your diet habits been around this holiday season. No judgment on yourself. Just do an inventory and give yourself a chance to say, okay, maybe I need to pause and reconnect with what's intentional around my food habits. The second part that contributes to your physical energy is movement. Movement is partially exercise, but in addition to exercise, it's the movement you have throughout the course of your day. Many of us are sitting in chairs all day long in front of Zoom calls. The term that's been out for a number of years now is sitting is the new cancer. When you're sitting on your butt and your body doesn't have an opportunity to circulate blood, oxygen doesn't have a chance to get through your body to the most important parts, the organs and the tissues and your cells. When that happens, it can lead to illness, ailments, mental health issues. So we not only have to think about the kind of exercise that we're doing, we also have to think about, are we getting even enough movement through the course of the day? Even little things like getting up and stretching or taking conference calls while walking around, doing breath work every few hours just to get the body circulating. 3 minutes of breath work feels like an internal shower. Movement is something that you're going to want to take a look at and say, am I getting enough of it? And when the weather gets colder, especially in this part of the country where I'm recording, oftentimes we don't get outside. I know my step count goes down. So I have to make a conscious effort to pace my apartment just to get the steps that I would have gotten normally from being outside. The third part of this physical component is recovery. Now, recovery incorporates both sleep, breaks, naps, days off, free time, and many of us are just not getting enough of any of those things. I see a lot of people during this time of year shortchange sleep, go down from 7 hours a night to 6 hours a night, 5.5 hours a night while drunken, so the quality of sleep goes down. I find that everyone's trying to jam in as many meetings as humanly possible, just grinding out their days. Not enough breaks, not enough recovery. And you've heard me talk about this before. If you are serious about excellence in your performance, then you have to be serious in your excellence in recovery. The two go hand in hand. Kobe Bryant, as he got later into his career, and he was as excellent as we've ever seen on a court, he was the guy who was in the training room, getting stretched out, getting massaged, doing the heat, the hot saunas and the cold plunges before and after the games for hours at a time. He took his recovery more seriously than anybody, which is what allowed him to play a sustained 20-year career at the highest of levels in a grueling sport. And he started to prioritize his sleep, I think halfway through his career, because he was realizing that he wasn't an 18-year-old anymore when he was trying to live off of 5 hours of sleep. Recovery, excellence in recovery is directly correlated to your excellence in performance. So here's the question I'm going to ask you at the end of each and every one of these sections. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your physical energy right now? Scale of 1 to 10. 1 being it's absolute garbage sewage system basement. 10 being I couldn't be more perfect. I could not do another thing to enhance the food I'm eating, the recovery, the movement that I'm doing. What's the number that you would give yourself? And keep track of this number, because this is the number that when we're going to look at the other 3 dimensions as well, you're going to see which one of these 4 categories represents the highest level of improvement. The second dimension of energy is the emotional dimension of energy. Emotional energy is the quality of energy that you have. Remember, physical energy is the quantity, emotional energy is the quality. There are 2 types of emotional energy: negative emotions and positive emotional energy. So let's talk about what are examples of negative emotional energy. Fear, resentment, jealousy, insecurity, doubt, depression, helplessness, hopelessness, right? Anything along that fear spectrum. And there's a whole variety of different negative energy sources: anxiety, tension. These are things that we're all very familiar with, and they bubble up in specific ways. Now, if you listen to some of the examples that I gave, even some of those negative emotional sources, energy sources, have different textures of energy within them. For example, depression is really like the absence of energy. If you've ever known someone who's been depressed, if you've been depressed yourself, the idea of getting up off the couch almost seems impossible. Getting out of bed seems impossible. There is no energy that's associated with that, which is why it's one of the most debilitating experiences as a human being. Contrast that with fear, terror, anxiety, right? Nerves, tension, even jealousy, right? Fury, rage. There is an extraordinary amount of energy that's associated with those negative energy sources. And if you think about one of the reasons why we rely so much on fear to be our motivator is because it does provide an energy. It is a fuel source. But what I'm going to ask you to really consider is it a clean fuel source? Right? Running off of negative energy emotions is kind of like the fast food of fuel sources. It does the trick potentially in the short order, right? Yeah. Like you can get motivated to do a lot of things when you're cranking off the Red Bull or the cocaine of fear, of anxiety, and you need more of it to keep pumping through your system to sustain you because negative energy sources are like gas in a gas tank. You can fill the tank up, but it will eventually go to E. Right? And when you are running on fumes of anxiety and tension, it eventually leads to burnout. It leads to disenchantment. Like, you know what it's like to just stay in a sustained place of anxiety and tension and fear, anger, those things being the motivating sources. It's exhausting. And then after a while, you have no motivation to do anything. You're just kind of like, it's not worth it. That's when you feel lazy, and you can mistake that for it being a character flaw. Oh, I'm inherently lazy. No. You're just tired of running off of fear and anxiety, and your system's actually looking for a new way of being. So let us take a look at the positive energy sources. What are examples of positive emotions? Excitement, creativity, bliss, joy, fascination, wonder, awe. How about peace? How about contentedness? Right? How about just happiness? Gratitude. Again, on this spectrum, and there's thousands of different words, thousands of different feelings and experiences and nuances along this positive energy spectrum that also have different textures of energy. Peace and contentedness is more subtle. It may not have much energy to it. You can just be sitting in a chair, not doing anything, and being happy with what is in that moment. If you're exhilarated, if you're childlike energy, if you're blissful, if you're exuberant, you may want to be spending the entire day active, dancing, creating, whatever it is that you're doing, laughing. That has a different kind of energy to it too. And you need to start to understand the different textures that come with it. Here's the deal between negative and positive energy sources. I'm very careful not to call negative energy sources bad and positive energy sources good. I'm not labeling them in that way. Why? Because we're human beings. We're going to experience negative emotions. We're going to experience positive emotions. And when we label them, certain ones bad, certain ones good, then you can start to make a judgment about yourself. It's like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling angry. I shouldn't be feeling depressed. I shouldn't feel guilt or shame, right? Those kinds of things. And then you feel guilty and shameful for feeling them. And it further entrenches you there. What I'd rather have you do is to just bring awareness to where are you on the spectrum. And then to develop training strategies to start to flex the muscle of positive energy more often. Because just like you learn how to train to calibrate your system to just run off of negative energy sources, think about this. You were probably raised in a certain way. And many of us were raised to be in a fearful, tense, anxious state, right? Consequences, deadlines, implications for not behaving a certain way, not getting certain grades on a test, not performing in a certain way on the athletic field. And those were the things that you learned to run off of fear on. There are others, like my sister Mary, who's completely calibrated to only positive emotion. She shuts down on negative energy sources. She doesn't run off of fear or anxiety. She's perfectly attuned to positive energy sources, and she flows that way. And she's one of the most energetic people I know. Constantly energized, constantly happy. She's trained this way. One of the training strategies to look for what's positive is a gratitude practice. Constantly throughout the course of a day, when something happens that you like, reading a great book, the weather being beautiful, a dog passing you that fills your heart, a child eating a popsicle. It's just, the kid couldn't be happier. Anything throughout the course of your day that brings you gratitude, you stop and you thank that moment, or you thank God, or you thank whatever. Just be thankful for the moment. At the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, have a journaling practice around gratitude. These are the things that start to calibrate and flex the muscle for looking for what's working versus fearing what's not. The positive energy sources are like the light from the sun. It's not going to burn out. You never hear someone say, dude, I'm exhausted from being grateful all day. It doesn't happen. You are exhausted from being anxious and tense and fearful and guilt-ridden and shameful. You see how that works? Negative energy sources like the gas in a gas tank. Positive energy sources like the light from the sun. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your emotional energy right now? 1 being couldn't be worse. 10 being couldn't do a single thing to improve it. Where's your energy and the emotional energy spectrum? The third dimension of energy is your mental energy. Mental energy is the focus of your energy. Think about it from this perspective. Is your focus like a laser beam, or is it like a buckshot scattered in a million different directions? Our mental energy has never been under greater siege than it is today. There are so many things competing for our attention and things that really know how to capture our attention. Look no further than your cell phone, right? But also, you turn on television, everything's breaking news. You drive down the street, signs, everywhere there's signs. There's always something competing for and grabbing your attention. And a lot of the marketing that's out there knows how to hit those dopamine receptors, those neurotransmitters, the thing that just know how to pull you in, suck you in. So we all know what it's like, even with the best of intentions, to be focused on something, to set aside an hour or 2 hours to do the thing that's most important in our lives or our business, and to have like one notification pop up on your cell phone and derail the whole thing. So if we want to be successful, if we want to be peaceful, it's going to hinge upon our ability to focus our energy, our mental energy, like a laser beam, and not allow ourselves to be scattered like a buckshot. So there's many different training strategies to focus your mental energy, but I'm just going to focus in on one, which is typically the highest point of leverage for everybody, which is your relationship with your cell phone. Now, your cell phone is the very thing that has been perfectly engineered, expertly engineered for you to get sucked in. There's a quote that I heard, I think by Tristan. I can't remember his last name right now, but there are thousands of designers on the other side of your screen working expertly to break down your sense of self-regulation. Thousands of expert developers working very hard on the other side of your screen to break down your sense of self-regulation. Said differently, the manufacturers of our phones and then all of the apps are working really hard to get your attention. No matter what's important to you, those apps want your attention. Your phone wants your attention. Why? Because there's a lot of commercial benefits, right? Of someone, getting your attention, getting you on the social media platform, going on that news platform, getting into your emails, opening up the marketing emails. And that can break down your sense of self-regulation unless you are walking the path of your great man and saying, no, I call those shots. So I'm going to give you 3 tips on how to take command of your cell phone. And these are tips that I talk about all the time, but every so often we drift and need to be brought back into correcting our course. So tip number 1, I want you to take a look at your cell phone usage. Tip number 1 is quantifying the usage you have on your cell phone. And there are 3 questions under here. Number 1 is, how many times a day do you check your phone? Truly, how many times are you picking up your phone? There are apps that you can download that will help you to track that. One time I heard a statistic. One of the statistics in one of the apps said, I think it was the Moment app, 120 times a day is how much the average business professional checks their phone. If you're to do the math, that means if we're awake for 18 hours a day and only sleeping 6 hours, that means you're checking your phone 5 to 6 times an hour every waking hour of your day. Can you start to think about the implications that has on your ability to focus, to be present, to not task switch, the impact it has on your anxiety, your tension? 5 to 6 times an hour, every single hour of every waking day. Stack up days, weeks, months, years, lifetime. Do you understand the impact that might be having on your ability to focus? So how many times a day are you checking your phone? Do you even know? Number 2, how much screen time are you spending per day? If you have an iPhone, it automatically will tell you, right? It's tracking. Are you spending 3 hours a day? Are you spending 6 hours a day? Do you know? And the question everyone always asks me is, Dominic, how much time should I be spending a day? I don't have a precise answer, but I have one answer I'm sure of. It's less. You should be spending less time on your phone per day. There's not a single person who I know who should be spending more time on their phone. So if you're to calibrate how much time you're using, can you make a commitment right now that for the next 30 days, I'm going to try and shave off 30 minutes a day. 30 minutes a day off my phone. All that really is a few powerful decisions to not check social media or news or go into your email when you're not thinking about it unconsciously. And then those 30 minutes every single day can be put towards your bold move, your meditation practice, your working out, your relationship. It's this easy. It is this easy. I'm telling you, it is this easy. When I went through this practice years ago, I ended up finding I was spending 2 hours per day more on my phone than I wanted to. I put into practice some switches. I carved out an extra 2 hours a day, and I ended up writing my first book, Design Your Future, in a period of, I think, 60, 70 days. That's how you write a book. It's like this stuff is life-changing, and it's this simple. The third question here is, what are your problem times per day where you get sucked into your phone? If you can recognize that for most people, it's the first thing in the morning, the last hour of the night where your phone sucks you in. For me, I found out I was spending 45 minutes in the morning, right after I woke up, sucked into my phone, and the last hour of my night before I went to bed, sucked into my phone, looking at it in my bed, both times, that I found that if I were to just take my phone out of my bedroom, it would eliminate the problem altogether. And I ended up getting more sleep. I ended up waking up in the morning and having more control over how I felt over the course of the day because I wasn't diving into my phone first thing. So, how many times a day do you check your phone? How much screen time do you spend? What are your problem times of day? When you start to get really specific around that and expert in that, you can make changes to start to carve out and use your phone less. Second thing to take command of your cell phone, turn off all your notifications. All non-essential notifications. Most people's phones are ringing, pinging, buzzing, flashing, notifying. Every moment, there's some sort of like thing that's calling for your attention. And studies have been shown in like testing facilities that when people are hooked up to biometric testing facility, like to scanners and sensors and nodes, that cortisol floods your system, the stress hormone, every time a notification goes off. If you think about how many times notifications go off over the course of the day, the cortisol flow in your body can cause you to burn out, can cause you constant and chronic stress. And at the very least, it certainly gets in the way of you focusing. I turn off all of my notifications on my phone other than phone calls and my flight app, in case there's like a notification of a delayed flight, which I would want to know about. Third thing to take command of your cell phone is replace your phone as your alarm clock. When I used to do keynote speeches to professional financial services firms, insurance firms, and I would go into a room and I'd say, how many of you use your cell phone as your alarm clock? 80 to 90% of the hands in the room went up. And I said, keep your hand up if you look at your phone in the first 15 minutes of waking. Very few hands, if any, ever went down. You are almost guaranteed, if your cell phone's your alarm clock, that the first thing you're going to do to turn off your alarm clock is then go into your phone, emails, texts, social media, news, letting the outside world flood you, fire hose you with information before your feet have even touched the ground, before you've even gotten intentional about your day. And all of a sudden, with the breaking news coming in, 19 out of 20 news stories are negative, you're in a negative state of mind. All of a sudden, when you're diving into social media, you're comparing yourself to everyone else. And all of a sudden, that comparison game starts to play in. Very few people walk away from their cell phones in an empowered, conscious, present, intentional state of being. Why would you ever start your day that way? James Clear talks about the power of making one decision that eliminates thousands of future decisions. And he talked about the idea of just not putting a television in his bedroom because he eliminated thousands of future decisions for him and his wife to say, do we go to bed now or do we watch a TV show? What's the TV show we're supposed to watch? Should we watch one episode? Should we watch 2 episodes? And then all of the subsequent decisions that get impacted the next morning when they didn't get enough sleep. Should I have coffee? Should I have? Make one decision, leave the TV out of the bedroom, they don't have to make thousands of those decisions in the future. Frees up a lot of mental space. You take your phone out of your bedroom, which I did, 7, 8 years ago. When you go into your bedroom, you never have to worry about, do I look at my phone right now? Do I not? And for the past, 6 or 7 years, I haven't looked at my phone within the first 30 minutes of waking, and it has completely transformed my consciousness, my presence, my intentionality. So the question now comes, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your mental energy operating at right now? Scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I am a buckshot in the worst sense. My bullets are flying everywhere. Or a 10 is I'm an absolute laser beam, couldn't be more focused. Like nothing can take me off my game. Where are you? Write that number down. The fourth and final dimension of energy is the spiritual dimension of energy. This is the force behind your energy, right? This is the purpose-driven energy. This is what I like to call your greatest energy, right? When I wrote about that in my book, On Purpose Leadership. Mark Twain once said, I love this quote, "The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why." The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. That why, right? The purpose behind your life. Nietzsche says, he who knows his why can endure any how. The person who knows their why can endure any how. And Viktor Frankl's the one who repeated that phrase over and over and over again in his book, A Man's Search for Meaning, when he was in a concentration camp, a series of concentration camps for 3 years. He knew his why. He knew his purpose. He was able to endure the worst of hows to survive and to live. His purpose was to live to see his family on the other side. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to see his family on the other side because none of them were alive. They were exterminated in the concentration camps. But his why kept him living. And thank goodness that he did, because his works, his experiences, his teachings have impacted millions of us in the decades that have followed, right? So, do you know your why? Are you connected to that spiritual energy? And even if the answer is right now, no, I'm willing to bet that at a point in time in your life, there was something that you were so passionate about that you just couldn't be stopped, even when there was adversity. And all I would like you to do in this point in time is, if you can't feel it now, go back to that time where you did and remember how powerful and potent that source was, and that it exists in you. It's still there. You just have to reconnect to it and find your path there. In the book, On Purpose Leadership, when I talk about your greatest energy comes from doing those things that when you do them, you lose your sense of self, right? That inner critic just seems to kind of quiet. There's a timelessness element to it. There's an effortless element to it. There's a richness, right? Feeling like you're maybe connected to something bigger, deeper. Time gets distorted. If you were doing that thing all day long, you may come home physically tired, but emotionally, energetically, spiritually, your tank is full. What are those things for you? And sometimes you know what those things are, but they often seem frivolous because they don't make you money. But these are the very things that need to be in your system to stay connected to that purpose-driven energy. Here are 4 statements that I'm going to make around your spiritual energy, and I want you, on a scale of 1 to 10, to calibrate for yourself how true these statements are around the present state of your spiritual energy. Statement number 1, I am actively working on allocating more time to what gives me my greatest energy. How true is that on a scale of 1 to 10? I am actively working on allocating more time to what gives me my greatest energy. What that means is creating space and time to do those things that light you up. How true is that on a 1 to 10 scale? Statement number 2, I have something on my future horizon that gives me that kid on my birthday excitement. How true is that on a scale of 1 to 10? I have something on my future horizon that gives me that kid on my birthday excitement. You know, when you were a kid, thinking about that future, whether it was a birthday or Christmas or a holiday, I'm going to get that skateboard or that video gaming console or that new album of whoever it is that I loved. That excitement that almost like couldn't allow you to sleep at night. How much of that exists in your life right now? Scale of 1 to 10. Statement number 3, I have something on my future horizon that makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit, right? How true is that on a scale of 1 to 10? There's something on my future horizon that's so meaningful, such an edge, so scary that it makes me throw up in my mouth a little. If nothing is on your future horizon that represents that kind of edge, then you're not really connected to your spiritual energy, because your spiritual energy, your purpose, asks something big of you. That can sometimes be scary. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how true is that statement? Finally, fourth statement, I'm contributing to something bigger than myself. How true is that? I'm contributing to something bigger than myself. The thing that can get us stuck in a rut is when we get self-consumed, self-absorbed. I'm not making the money that I want. No one's appreciating me. Things aren't happening as quickly as I want. My partner's rubbing me the wrong way, nagging me, whatever it is. You get stuck in your own little cocoon of bullshit. But when we're connected to something bigger than ourselves, our own inner world problems cease to exist with the same level of volume or amplitude, don't they? You can kind of quiet that because you're connected with something, you're in lockstep with something that seems to be bigger. Whether that means, your family, or maybe it's the business and the employees that you care for, your customers. Maybe it's the relationship you're building with your partner, the community that you're serving. Maybe it's service to God. What is bigger than you and your own little petty problems that can feel very real at times? I get sucked into it just like anyone else. But when I'm connected to my bigger purpose, those cease to exist in the same way. So on a scale of 1 to 10, are you contributing something bigger than yourself? So the final question for this section is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your spiritual energy right now? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your spiritual energy? So now that we've gone through all 4 of the dimensions of energy and you've scored yourself in each of those categories, I want you to identify the one category that represents the highest point of leverage. Which of the scores represents the most opportunity for you to improve upon? Now, I know for many of the people who I run this exercise with, I often find that a lot of people fall into the physical dimension of energy category because one of the fastest ways to elevate all of the other dimensions is to nail the physical energy component because it sits at the foundation, right? If you're exhausted, if you're dragging because you're eating the wrong stuff, if you haven't worked out and your body feels weak and frail, if you're feeling sick, then it's really hard to stay in a positive emotional state. It's hard to be focused mentally. It's hard to remain connected to your higher purpose. So I often find that a lot of people end up focusing on expanding their physical dimension of energy first because it's the rising tide that lifts all boats. Okay? You may be crushing your physical energy component, so you may want to look at the other 3 categories, which is great. Here's what I want you to do. Look at the score that you're intending to work upon. Let's say you picked the emotional energy dimension and gave yourself a 5. I'd like you to envision what it would be like, what impact it would have on your life to just go from a 5 to a 7. If your emotional energy just improved from 5 to a 7, or whatever dimension you pick, just 2 points, what would the resultant impact be in your life? How would you feel? How would the people around you feel? How would they respond to you? What would that impact have on your business and your family? Just 2 points. And then what is the one thing you need to do? Or the series of things, small things you need to do to go from that 5 to that 7, or from that 7 to that 9, or from that 3 to the 5, wherever it is. What is the impact of going up just 2 points? What are the actions that you need to take to go up those 2 points? And remember where I started this conversation at the very beginning was asking you the question of if you had more energy, where would you allocate it? Is it to your bold move? Is it to your business? Is it to your family? Is it to your joy, to your pleasure, to your hobbies, to finding, your passion, your purpose? Figure out how this one dimension of energy is going to support that big thing. And here's one final reminder that in the show notes, there's the registration link to register for the 100 Great Push-Up Challenge. 60 days, starting January 1st, going to March 1st with hundreds of men around the world from this community to do this free challenge to train your body and mind to do 100 consecutive push-ups in a row. The link is in the show notes. Hey, did you get something of value out of this podcast? If so, I'm going to ask you a favor. would you be so amazing as to go over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and a review? Your ratings and reviews can show someone who's just discovered our podcast for the first time that we are worth listening to. And that way we can reach a wider audience. So please head over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review. You rock.